I'm La Molly, host of Super Sonido, and I am here with Cruzloma all the way from Ecuador. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for
Hello.
having us.
Hello. Okay.
Glad to be here.
I just have a few questions for you. So your EP, Mitos y Ritos, mixes traditional Latin American rhythms with modern genres like electronica and global bass. How do you go about blending these two worlds while like keeping the essence of those traditions and keeping it fresh for newer listeners?
I think mostly it's because it's not a blend. It's actually like more we're taking all of these languages and making new music with it, with a lot of respect with everything that we've been studied through all this time. We've been musicians, I think, for a very long time. We've been playing for a long time. So I think it's just more about studying the music, taking it, and then we're presenting this kind of like continuity of its history rather than just like, I don't think we're recovering stuff.
Right.
It's been there. It's just like,
It's like we're making our own interpretation of modern music.
using
We
this language. So we don't do this blend thing. It's more about like we're taking the languages and presenting them as our own music. No, like yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
No,
I'm
that
doing the
makes
same.
perfect sense. And in that, you also include like some sacred prayers, some like, well, ritos, right? How important is spirituality and mysticism to your work? And how do you honor those practices while adding your own artistic touch?
Oh, I think it's embedded in our culture. Is like we come from a very Catholic culture in general. If you go to the downtown of Quito, which is the best preserved in the whole Latin American region, it's just like a lot of churches. I think we all go like we last time we were here, we talked a little bit of that in another interview. We were like all hanging virgins and crosses. I have even tattoos with stuff that are from like spiritual realms and symbolisms from where we are. And I think it's just like a daily thing. I don't think it's like you have to be there to understand it. Like how. Like the juxtaposition of all these things happening at the same time is very nice, very intricate, and very like so. I don't know, so normal for us to be like, you know, your grandmother just giving you a blessing before you go out, and I think it's just part of what we do.
It's not like, oh, you can only talk about that here in this place, or it's just kind of like you said, embedded.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it by like just by doing it, it shows a lot of respect to like, you know, all these traditions and just acknowledging the existence of them around us.
And I think also like it's really important to actually like collaborate. Like we go and collaborate like with people from communities and make music with them, and we actually like are really grateful to have the opportunity to go there, and we learn a lot from them. Like it's every time it's amazing. Like we learn so much about music and traditions and history,
and
life.
Yeah, and then that sort of gets translated to your music, even though there's not necessarily a ton of lyrics, right? But you can feel it.
Yeah, I think that's just how we identify ourselves with music. We've never been like a lot into lyrics. Sometimes we're like listening to music and we don't even listen to the lyrics, but we're driven by the melodies and all these things. So I think we try to translate that through the way we display our music and we perform. So we just showcase these things where like, oh my God, I have this feeling that I've been here before, but I don't know when or how. And it's through this kind of filter that is just like what we're looking for is timeless. This timeless feeling of music.
Yeah, actually, we talk a lot about that with Sergio. Like we try to really like get always like that mood like from past times. You know, I don't think we like that a lot. Like we are always trying to look for that.
And still keeping it fresh, as you said before.
Yeah.
I feel like our in general music is also like really visual, even though we don't think too much about it. Like I don't know, like all the
definitely takes you places and definitely like brings images and pictures, and especially if you're Ecuadorian, of course, you know, you'll be like completely influenced by it. Yeah, but at the same time, as we've been here, we see people that it's like, oh my God, you actually took us like on a journey or whatever, and we're not thinking about it. We're like, just looking at each other while we perform. And I think that's amazing because that translates all this effort and all these languages and people too. And we become kind of a bridge between people that really don't have any idea of what we're doing, right. And people that actually can identify themselves in what we're doing and in what we're trying to bring.
So let's talk a little bit about your album, Mitos y Ritos. It is sort of like an ode to the indigenous cultures of Ecuador. Can you share a bit about your personal connection to these traditions and how they've influenced you both musically and just in how you see the world?
Well, I feel like in general, like the cultures in South America, they view a lot the world in a circular way, and a dualism is always like, you know, the you got the moon, you got the sun, and I feel like not everything for them is like linear. It's just like a circle. Mm-hmm. So I think like we identify a lot with that.
Yeah. Also, again, like I think because it's how like the outside view of how it works is like people think like, oh, communities are there and we are here. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work like that. We actually we all live together. We all share a space. Even though we're from the capital, we're not actually from the city, so that gives us another kind of like exposure. Mm-hmm. And I think the way we're connected is again through collaboration and through, you know, these actual sharing human spaces and time. We think we tend. I see this tendency like we have this thing to like, oh, there's a barrier between us, and we have to like we don't actually realize we're sharing these spaces, and we don't, you know, take action on these spaces. And again, we're trying to put away this idea where like, oh, communities are over there and you have to like reach them, and no, they're actually there and they're actually on your daily life. Again, when you go into the bus, you pop some music there. Mm-hmm. You go into the store or into the local bodega, music, indigenous people, you interact with them. So I think we just like trying to vanish this division that we try to put in our minds, where it's like, oh, how did you got there? It's like, I didn't got there, it's my neighbor.
It's just there. Yeah. Well, feels a lot like how you talked about the music in the first question, that it's not a blending. A lot of people who make music that is both ancestral, traditional, and modern talk about it as a blend, but it's just like it's a reinvention of those traditions. And that makes me think of how it is sort of a reinvention or mirrors the reinvention of our own selves, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And so can you talk a little bit about that and how maybe preserving and reinventing these cultural traditions sort of helps us understand who we are?
This is a deep question, deep answer to I don't know how specifically it will help everyone. I just can talk about our journeys. Yeah. And I think being mestizo as we are, like coming from, you know, different sides, or even races and stuff, being a mix of everything, it's difficult to actually find a place where you are. Even though it's most of the population or whatever, when you actually go into what is like, you know, self-identification inside a place, it takes time. And I think that was the path for music. I think that's why we chose music, because it was talking to ourselves from everywhere, from our houses, from our parents, from, again, all these shared spaces. And we were like, okay, so what's our space in this sonic ecology? Let's call it like that. And we found this, and it was like, we can actually talk to each other through this. And we actually find each other rather than find like all these, you know, very deep thoughts of like, oh, my ancestry and all these indigenous things. Like, we find ourselves in friends. We find ourselves in things that we don't think about before we think about all these deep, very deep things. We're just like, I love to live in the mountains, and he loves to live in the mountains. And what happens in the mountains is this kind of music. And then we travel somewhere. It's like, oh, I love this music, and then we share it. We share it again with the people that are doing it inside their own places, and then we were like, oh, we want to share the experience through our vision and through our friendship. I think it's more about that. You know, sometimes I think it's just getting too deep into the side of like, oh, again, who I am in this place. And sometimes it's very simple. Sometimes we're just good friends sharing good music and doing an interpretation of our environment.
Yeah.
But I feel like also it's like, it's just us also trying to find our voice as mestizos, you know, like we're just like trying, find our own identity and ideas, and I think that's it.
Yeah, and making some good music along the way. So you have your album Mitos y Ritos. You guys just got off a pretty big week at South by Southwest. So what do you see in the future for Cruzloma?
Well, right now we're working on our first album. Hopefully, like we're gonna be able to finish before the summer ends. So right now that's our plan. We're also working on a remix album for the EP. I don't know where it's gonna come out, but that's right now our like two things that we're working on right now.
And we will drop some like candy drops along the way, like some music. So it's gonna be pretty interesting.
And to be honest, like also try to play everywhere we can. Just like, you know, applying to festivals, music conferences. So I think like right now that's the plan for Cruzloma.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us here at Kubo.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.